Alright everybody, welcome back to the T26 channel where we cover everything US men's national team related, and as we wrap up the month of February, we get to start being excited about our next international window where the US men's national team will be competing in the Concacaf Nations League semifinals and hopefully finals starting on March 20th against Panama. And while there's a ton to be excited about when looking at this US men's national team window, our roster does have a few concerns in it as well. More specifically, our forwards, and even more specifically, our striker group. When I talk about our forwards, I'm including our wide attacking players like Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah, and while they're performing at a very high level at their clubs, that's not our deepest position, but the real positional group that worries me is our strikers. Typically, our striker group picks itself with Josh Sargent, Fuller Balogun, and Ricardo Pepi heading up our front three. If everyone's healthy, I think that those three are almost certainly locks to compete for the number 9 position in every single camp. However, health seems to continually be an issue for the members of the US men's national team, especially our striker group. Josh Sargent just came off of a long injury stint, and luckily he's back in form and scoring goals for Norwich City, but now Fuller Balogun and Ricardo Pepi are suffering more long-term injuries. Fuller Balogun is still dealing with that shoulder injury and rehabbing from his surgery, and just a few weeks ago, Ricardo Pepi went down and had knee surgery as well, and he's done for this season. So now, our striker pool, which once looked decently deep, is unfortunately very shallow. In this video, we're going to break down who could potentially be called into our Nations League roster amongst these injuries, as well as what I think we're really missing with Flo Balogun and Ricardo Pepi being injured. As I mentioned, if everyone's healthy, I think our striker talent pool is fairly deep. We have some really high-end talent with Flo Balogun and Ricardo Pepi, and Josh Sargent also continues to prove himself at the club level, and while that hasn't translated to the national team, we've seen glimpses of his capabilities. He was fantastic for us in the World Cup. No, he didn't put the ball in the back of the net, but he is really strong when it comes to combination and hold-up play and attracting attention and distributing the ball. I'm really excited for him to continue to do that, and I'm really excited to see the fact that he came back from his injury and he's scoring goals for fun with Norwich. Hopefully in the future, maybe at the end of the season, he takes that jump and gets back into a top 5 league. Beyond Josh Sargent, I'm not really sure what direction Mauricio Pochettino is going to go in terms of who he's going to bring in, but I do believe that Brandon Vazquez and Patrick Agyemang both are going to garner a little bit of attention from him and might get called into this roster. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw one or both of those players called in. The thing that worries me about bringing each of those two players into this Nations League is the fact that both of them are just going to be kicking off their seasons with their clubs in MLS, and they're not going to be hitting that mid-season form that a lot of the European-based players are. We've never seen Agyemang really compete at an A-team level, and we've seen Brandon Vazquez look fairly shaky and uncertain. So I don't know what we're going to get with them when it comes to their depth. Vazquez, I think, is a little bit one-dimensional. He's good in the air, but he's not necessarily great with his feet. He's not good in tight spaces, and he's not the most clinical finisher. Agyemang has, I don't want to say burst onto the scene recently, but he is emerging as a depth piece for us overall. He's what I would call a late bloomer, and he scored 10 goals with Charlotte FC last year, but he's not young. He's 24 and still finding his way in MLS, so I don't know if that top level talent's there, but it is in his history, it is in his MO that he rises to the occasion, he rises to the challenge. He's somebody who has consistently flown under the radar until he's produced, and hopefully he continues to produce. At this channel, I'm on everybody's side. I'm rooting for every single US men's national team player to find success, and if he's going to do that and produce for us, by all means bring him in, but until he does that, until he proves himself, I have to remain a little bit skeptical. He does bring something a little bit different from Vazquez to the table. I think that Agyemang, his runs are a little bit more dynamic. He likes to stretch the defense. He's got a little bit more pace than Vazquez, and he's absolutely massive, so he can produce out of the air as well. We saw him score a few goals in the January camp, and if nothing else, I like a striker who has the confidence to shoot, who has the confidence to make those runs and get himself in the right position to score goals. Is he going to be the most clinical? I'm not sure, but that's what a striker is there for. Take your chances. If I were in Mauricio Pochettino's shoes, I would obviously call in Josh Sargent. I think he is the striker who is performing at the highest level out of all of those three, and he's scoring goals for fun right now. He's making the championship look way too easy. He's getting on the end of things. His movement is fantastic off the ball, and he's putting the ball in the back of the net. There's nothing that we can complain about there. Maybe his top-end talent isn't quite what Pepe's or Balogun's might be, but you can't fault a guy for putting the ball in the back of the net and making the most of his opportunities. Outside of Josh, I would definitely call in Vasquez. I think that he brings something a little bit different than Josh Sargent does. While Josh is good in the air, Vasquez is also very strong aerially and can be another target striker for us if we get in a tough spot late in games. The reason I would choose Vasquez over Agyemang is simply based off of experience. We've seen Brandon Vasquez with the national team, with the A team due to injuries in the past, and while he's not perfect, he has looked passable. We know what we're going to get from him. Agyemang's only exposure with the U.S. men's national team was this year's January camp, and as we all know, that camp, the competition is not very strong. None of our European-based players are there. None of our competition's best players were there either. It was easily a C roster for everybody, so we don't know what he can bring at the top level, and I'm sorry, but I don't think it's right to take a chance on a player for the first time when there's a trophy on the line. Now is not the time to start experimenting with the lineup and taking chances on unknowns. So you're probably hearing that and thinking, we're only going to bring 2 strikers to this tournament, and my answer to that is no. My plan would be to actually utilize the depth that we have at other positions and shift a player into that number 9 position. And truthfully, I think he's above Brandon Vasquez on the depth chart, and that player is Tim Weah. If we get into a pinch, if we have an injury, if we have something come up, I think that Tim Weah is than any striker in MLS does. We have some depth at our winger position. We have a very, very strong midfield where we can play with our formation to make Tim available to slot into that number 9 role if we need to. So now let's talk about what we're missing when Ricardo Pepi and Fuller and Balogun are not in the lineup. And we're going to start with Ricardo Pepi because he is having an absolutely monster season that was cut short by a knee injury recently. Ricardo Pepi has played 29 matches this year and has 18 goals and 3 assists for PSV Eindhoven. He is producing at an absolutely insane clip that's garnering attention from massive clubs all across Europe. While Pepi may not be the most complete striker yet, his hold-up play isn't perfect, he's not the fastest breakaway kind of player, he is absolutely clinical in front of goal, his movement is amazing and continually improving, and he finds himself in good places at all times. And that is something that I believe can't truly be taught. Some strikers just have a natural instinct in and around the box, and he is one of them. So we're definitely going to miss Pepi and his clinical movement and finishing in the next couple of games. Balogun, on the other hand, is that player who can create for himself, who can stretch defenses, who can run at you, who can make good runs in and around the box, and he's also a good finisher. I believe that Pepi's a little bit stronger on the finishing, but Balogun's combination play and ability to create for himself provides just an additional wrinkle for us and an additional problem for other teams to think about when they prepare to play us. So without those 2 players, we need somebody who's well-rounded, who can combine, who can hold the ball up, who can make some passes, as well as be clinical in front of goal. And truthfully, the most well-rounded player that we have right now to do that is Josh Sargent. He needs to deliver in this window. If he doesn't, I think that his opportunities for the U.S. men's national team are going to shrink and shrink, because we know that every time Pepi has stepped on the field for us, he's looked good outside of 1 or 2 off situations. Balogun as well, and if I'm going back to Copa America, Balogun was one of the very few players who did look good for us. So competition for our starting striker is at an all-time high. And if Josh wants to remain in that conversation, he needs to produce now. All right, guys, that's everything I've got for you today. Who do you think should be our number 9 as we head into the Nations League semifinals and finals? Should it be Josh? Should it be Tim? Should it be somebody else? Did I leave somebody off the list who you would like to see get called in? Drop a comment in the comment section down below and let me know your thoughts. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.